The effects of natural phenomena is something that let us discuss that first. There are two major natural phenomena which come in place when we have to look at the loads that are imposed on the dam. The primary load that is imposed on the dam is the hydraulic load, which is the hydrostatic pressure, and also the uplift pressures or the seepage pressures or pore water pressures, which are generated due to the stored water behind it. And the water storage comes up because of the floods. Primarily the inflow into the reservoir comes out during the monsoon period, in which various spurts of intense rainfall activities take place, and they do create floods. So floods, when they come, we have to see that whether the dam is capable of handling these floods or not. So that poses the flood hazards. In the flood hazards, there is a situation that we provide for the particular extra spillway capacity in the dam, because no dam in the world can be built in such a manner that it will never release any water. This is one of the very big misconception that has got generated because of the scarcity of water in our country, that if you open the gates of the dam, then that is considered to be a disaster. Whereas the dams are made and are constructed for creating reservoirs which are a fraction of the annual water that passes through that river during a year. So eventually, looking at some surplus years and looking at some shortfall years, there are going to be areas when we will have to release the water from the dam, and there are going to be floods which are going to be of sizable nature. When a flood comes, the reservoir level rises, it has an impact on the stability of the dam, and then if spillway capacity is not adequate, then it can create a danger of overtopping. This is the most prevalent reason for failure of the dams, so we have to look at this overtopping in a careful manner. The earth dam overtopping is most disastrous because the rock fills are not capable of resisting the fast flowing water that flows over them and fail very quickly. Even concrete or masonry dams may also fail, because if they overtop and if there are not adequate energy dissipation arrangements at their foot, then the undermining of the foundation may take place and the dam may get overturned and fail. So impact on the stability of the dam due to uncontrolled rise of water is something which any engineer will have to continue fearing. The next impact will be on the energy dissipation arrangements, because when water falls from a great height and it encounters a lot of, it accumulates a lot of momentum, the energy that potential energy gets converted into the kinetic energy, and then that energy has to be dissipated at the downstream, so that the downstream channel does not experience an uncontrolled erosions and uncontrolled damages. And the energy dissipation arrangements are always very near the foundation toe of the dam, and there any uncontrolled erosions that may take place can also endanger the stability of the dam. So flood also has an impact on the energy dissipation security. The gates and control structures are the ones which are managing these floods, and any uncontrolled flood will create damages to them. If they become inoperable, then it creates a stability issue or the overturning issue for the dam itself. And then lastly, it creates the inundation hazard to the downstream. So how much water you are able to release, and based on that, how much inundation that may take place on the downstream, and what kind of developments should be there. So the floods become a very important natural phenomena which has to be looked at for the dam safety point of view. Another important phenomena is the seismic hazards. Seismic hazards are also random phenomena like what we consider for the dams, like rainfall. Rainfall is also a random phenomena. Seismic hazards are generated due to the seismic events of various magnitude. How the seismic events occur, when they occur, are very complex sciences. seismology has also not been able to provide a full answer to it. Our approach is basically observational. We try to look at various seismic events that take place, and based on that we try to work out that if a particular kind of event that takes place, how the waves will propagate through the earth, and then what kind of impact forces, dynamic forces, that will be implied on the dam. And once these forces are applied, the dam will have a tendency to crack, or in the extreme events it can even overturn if the section is not adequate, and that may lead to uncontrolled release of water and sunny day failure. And post disaster impact of such failure becomes very great, because on one side, when a major seismic event takes place, it creates a lot of damage to the properties and it creates a lot of damage to the infrastructure, and the source of water supply has to be restored very quickly for the life to continue, and it takes a lot of time before this kind of replenishment can take place, and that creates a post disaster impact on the economic recovery. So the seismic hazards are the other major hazards that we have to look at. Risk level for the natural phenomena are the critical dam safety evaluation criteria. When we have to look at the risk level that we are prepared to accept, then there have been a sea change in the practices that have happened over the years. In very early days, there used to be empirical formulae which used to determine the risk of flood from a given formula, and the formula was based on general experience because the instrumental readings were not very much available. Later on, the statistical methods of return flood concepts came in picture, in which a Gumbel distribution or a variation thereof was used, and probability of occurrence of a flood used to get determined, and that used to be called the return period. And generally in those days it used to be considered that a 1 in 100 years return period is the acceptable risk for which the dam should be designed, and dam should be able to perform the very well in case of occurrence of a 1 in 100 year flood. After that, when the further developments took place, the hydrodynamic approach, hydrometeorological approach, was considered to be more rational than looking at purely the statistical methods of the return periods. And in that, the concepts of probable maximum flood and standard project floods have come up, wherein the probable maximum flood is becoming the theoretical largest flood resulting from a combination of most severe meteorological and hydrological conditions that could conceivably occur in a given area. When there was a migration from the return period flood to the probable maximum flood concepts, there was a lot of dams who were earlier designed using the statistical flood frequency approach, and there are still dams which have been designed using those earlier days formulae. But now, when the probable maximum flood concept and the hydrometeorological approach has been adopted as a design standard, it becomes necessary for these dams to cater to these additional floods, and additional flood handling capacities become a very major part of dam rehabilitation program because of the concept of probable maximum flood which is required to be adopted now. There are a lot of issues which are associated with the flood hydrology, and the flood hydrology is going to be discussed very extensively by my other colleagues in the later chapters. But the key issue is to understand that in the dam safety, the level of acceptable risk determines how much we are going to spend on the various remediation measures that will be required in the future. The other similar aspect of the natural phenomena is the seismic risks. Again here, what used to happen was that when in the earlier days, the concept was to divide the area into zones of seismic zones of various levels of risks, and then in those zones a kind of a static or a pseudo-static kind of a force that will occur as an impulse on a structure used to be determined, and for that we used to specify the earthquake coefficients or seismic coefficients, which are still remembered by most of us as part of our undergraduate level studies, and they are still in use for some of the non-important structures across the country. For that, the seismic zoning was carried out for the entire India, and for each of the zone, depending upon the seismotectonic environment, the risks were specified, and these risks were in terms of factors of acceleration of gravity, which will be applied as a static force in addition to the other static forces that will be applied on the dam, and this used to be called pseudostatic analysis. In the pseudostatic analysis approach, the behavior of the dam under a dynamic, flexible, elastic or elastoplastic structure was not fully considered. Dam was considered to be a purely rigid body, and then a static force will be applied in addition to the hydrostatic force, which will provide you with the new stresses, and against those stresses the dam used to be considered to be safe. However, with the advent of knowledge and our analytical technologies, we found that dams present a very severe risk to the areas if we end up creating any failure due to earthquake, and those failures are something which we are not likely to accept very well. So a site specific seismic risk approach got developed. This approach also was similar to the approaches that were used for nuclear power stations, because the disaster that gets created by a dam failure under an earthquake is almost similar to happening of explosion of a nuclear power plant. So in this case, site specific seismic risk evaluation became necessary, in which various seismotectonic features around the dam site are evaluated from their potential of creating the earthquake, and then their effects on the dam by creation of that particular magnitude of earthquake was evaluated, and the event that used to become the one which is providing the maximum amount of forces and disturbance to the dam will be considered as an event against which we have to design the earthquake. Now for that, the concept of maximum credible earthquake has been adopted by the worldwide community, and it has been adopted now in India also. The maximum credible earthquake for a seismic source zone is the largest event that could be expected to occur in the region under the presently known seismotectonic environment and the structural system. And based on this maximum credible earthquake, the design basis earthquake is worked out, which represent a little lesser level of safety, but it represents a level of ground motion at dam site in which only minor and easily repairable damage is acceptable. Now, in case of seismic risks, the maximum credible earthquake used to provide us with the events which were so large that if we accept no damages concept there, the dam design would become highly uneconomical, and it was found that very few dams, especially the concrete dams, have failed completely and released their waters under the earthquake events which were not as a part of their design considerations. So design basis earthquake was taken in as an earthquake which will not create any significant damages, and in case of maximum credible earthquake, the safety will be checked and to see that the dam does not fail catastrophically and release all its waters by virtue of the failure. For the evaluation of seismic risks, various countries have taken up various measures. In case of India, after the Koyna earthquake took place in 1967, and because of the effects on the Koyna Dam, there was a lot of consideration of the seismic risks to the dams, and for that, Government of India set up a special committee, which was then used to be called Standing Committee. Now it is being called the National Committee for Design Seismic Parameters, and this committee evaluates the seismic risk to a dam on a case-to-case basis using the site-specific approach, and carries out an analysis and then recommends a seismic risk that is in the form of a maximum credible earthquake magnitude, location, and the pseudo time history for the project, and also recommends the design basis earthquake. So the risk levels for the natural phenomena are very important, and these aspects are going to be dealt with in the course in greater detail with the help of a special set of lectures. But suffice it to say that these risks and the re-evaluation of these risks is a major exercise for a comprehensive dam safety review when we have to take up this kind of exercise every, let's say, about 10 years or so. This we will discuss later. The next issue affecting is the materials and aging. There are different materials that we use for construction of a dam. Largely they can be categorized as either concrete or masonry or earth and rockfill materials. They are highly different in their behavior, they are highly different in their mechanics, so we need to discuss them on a separate basis. Even between concrete and masonry also there are differences which we need to really look at. But concrete and masonry dams, where primarily the mass concrete is used, the issues that come up are like this: thermal cracking of mass concrete. When a mass concrete is constructed, the heat of hydration gets trapped in the partially set concrete, and the new lifts keep on coming over that, and then this creates a rise in the temperature in the mass concrete, and then later on this temperature gets dissipated, and at that time shrinkage takes place, and because of that, with the set concrete undergoes a internal tension, and then it generates cracks and concrete soundness gets reduced. This thermal cracking is of a very important phenomena. This has been under our examination since the construction of Hoover Dam and earlier in 1920s. Good methodologies have been developed, but still it has to be verified that if the cracks that are occurring or they are being noticed, have they got any consideration from the thermal cracking, and if the cracks are developed, then we may have to carry out some remedial measures. This thermal cracking is not very evident or not very prevalent in case of masonry dams. Masonry dams are actually special structures. In masonry dams, the random rubble masonry has been very predominantly used in our country. The random rubble masonry is something where we take large stones and then provide them with the mortar and set them in the layers of mortar with each other, so that the mortar acts as a bonding agent along with the cement. And in earlier days there used to be even lime surki and various other materials that were used, and it creates a matrix of material which is capable of resisting the forces and has got sufficient compactness for ensuring certain level of permeability. So masonry dams are also having somewhat similar behavior with relation to concrete, but however the quantum of cement that is used is much lesser, and because of that we do not consider thermal cracking is a very severe issue in case of masonry dams. However, nowadays because of the various construction quality and other issues, the masonry is not preferred, and we are largely constructing only the concrete dams. In the concrete dams nowadays we are going in for the roller compacted concrete dams, which are a special category of concrete, and there again the issue of cracking and other such phenomena has a role to play, and we have to really look at them. But these are still specialized areas, and no, we need not really discuss at this point of time. Other issue is structural cracking for concrete or masonry. Structural cracking can occur because of the uneven deformation of the foundations under the loads and various other movements that may happen, and because of that the structure may not be able to sustain the loads which are generated on it on a set structure, and because of that the structural cracking takes place. These cracks are very identifiable, and they are very strongly in a particular direction, and they have a particular characteristic which a concrete technologist will be able to tell you at a later date. But structural cracking is also a phenomena that has to be seen over some period of time till the foundation and the dam systems get stabilized, and then also if there are any disturbances because of the earthquakes or because of some movements in the abutments, we may have to deal with the structural cracking. Alkali silica reaction is a very major aspect of concrete deterioration with the age. The alkali in the cement over a long period of time reacts with specified metamorphosed silica in the aggregates and forms a reaction product which in the presence of water is having larger volume than its constituent materials, and because of that it creates an expansion tendency in the concrete, which then results in cracking, which also results in large deformations, as has been noticed in case of Hirakud Dam or is in case of Rihand Dam, and render the structures inoperable at times. Alkali silica reaction is a very difficult phenomena to handle, and it requires continuing care and continuing attention for very long periods of time. The situation has gone to an extent that in some of the cases, like one American Falls Dam in US or a few dams in South Africa, where the dams had to be replaced by new concrete dams and the old concrete dam had to be abandoned. So alkali silica reaction is a very important phenomena for which a lot of care during the construction is required, because there are specific minerals, especially a mineral called strained quartz, a quartz which has undergone certain amount of straining, and by virtue of which its characteristics changes, and those strained quartz minerals have got a very strong tendency to react with the alkali. In India there are a lot of cements which are having high alkali contents also. So this area has to be taken care at the time of construction, at the time of selection of the aggregates, and then later on, after taking due care over there, we have to then take care if at all such phenomena develop later on in the age of the dam. Since we are dealing with the dams which are quite old, these technologies and these materials, this knowledge was not there in those periods of time, and we may have to face the alkali silica reaction in some of the old dams, and we have to be aware about it. The other aspect is the chemical attacks, when the chlorides, sulfates or acids attack the concrete. In some rare cases there are waters which are containing substantial acidic components, and the reservoir water itself has a tendency to attack the concrete. There is one example in Meghalaya for the lower Umatru Dam, and where and we had to design the dam in that proper fashion when another dam was being constructed upstream of this particular development. Chloride attack and sulfate attack is also associated with sometimes the polluted waters. When very small dams are there, and they'll end up with on the streams which may end up conducting the nitrogen charged waters due to the pollution, or the chloride charged water which are again due to the pollution, then they have a tendency that the chlorides attack the reinforcements and also attack the concrete, and then they create an expansive tendency. Because of that, the structural members of the dam may undergo cracking and may also undergo deterioration. So these aspects are also some areas which we need to really look at. Then the concrete and masonry dams are also subject to abrasions and erosions due to fast flowing water, especially on the spillway glacis and then in the energy dissipation parts. If these abrasions and erosions are left unattended, they may expose the reinforcements, or they may expose the underlying mass concrete, and with these erosions they may jeopardize the stability of the dam, because after the concrete gets eroded, the natural rocks and the various other foundation materials that are exposed, they also start getting eroded, and undermining of the dam from the downstream starts. So abrasions and erosions of concrete also have to be looked at when we are looking at the materials and aging part. The corrosion of reinforcements and metal parts are two aspects which we discussed in case of the chemical attacks. And then the metal parts, especially the hydromechanical structures of gates and control structures, they are also subjected to corrosion, and because of the corrosion they may lose their strength. If we are not able to provide proper drainage, proper maintenance of those structures, then the gates may have a tendency to give way, and for that a very detailed hydromechanical aspects lectures are going to be there in this course, where these will be discussed in greater detail. Earth and rockfill materials form the other major category of materials with which we construct the dams. Earthen and rockfill dam are constructed where the foundation conditions are not conducive for constructing a concrete dam, and there the issues are slightly different. If the materials are selected in a proper manner with proper properties assurance, then there is a tendency for the earth and rockfill materials to get stabilized over the period of time. But if there are any other issues like the less compaction or various other such issues are there, then they are subjected to internal erosion and piping tendencies. In the piping, the concentrated paths of water get developed, which conduct the water in a manner that when the water exceeds the dam body, it has got sufficient energy to dislodge the particles of earth or rockfill where it is exceeding, that energy is also termed as exit gradient, and from there the erosion may start and it may fail the entire dam. There is another issue of liquefaction under seismic events, where because of the grain size distribution characteristics of the sands especially, during intense shaking, the water that is there in the sand gets charged with pressure. It actually takes the more pressure from the earthquake shaking, and then because of that, the high pore pressures that instantaneously get generated make the entire sand lose their strength, and sand behaves like a liquid which will make the entire dam collapse. The liquefaction has been a very major phenomena in US, especially for their hydraulic fill dams, where the particle size variations used to be very minor, and San Fernando Dam, which was analyzed by Professor H.B. Seed, and that became a very standard example of the liquefaction failures, and from there a lot of design criteria and lot of material characterization criteria has come up, and now we find that the liquefaction under the seismic events largely remains confined to the foundation strata, and the dam body that we create, we try to avoid the occurrence of such liquefaction by suitable characterization of the materials. The burrowing animals are another issue which are largely faced in the earth and rockfill dams, which are of relatively small height, and the attention to those are not really provided in a great manner, where the burrowing animals create the holes in the body of the dam, and these holes then act as a piping spouts and create a failure for the dam. Many times this kind of a area is witnessed in canal embankments also, when there are large canal embankments and the canal runs intermittently, then the soil gets sufficiently dried up in the fill material, in which the burrowing animals have a tendency to go in. A very interesting thing that really happens is that when the dams are of very small height, generally at the level of say minor irrigation projects, hardly catering to something like say 1,000 to 5,000 hectares, the dams itself are relatively small, and the population development takes place very near the dam. Sometimes we have seen that in case of historical dams, the entire village or entire town gets developed right at the foot of the dam. And because of the human activities, there are a lot of activities of the rodents as well. And these rodents, if they are left unchecked, they have a very good tendency to go towards the dam and then try to burrow there their life shelters. And these issues need to be really considered while we evaluate the safety of the earth and rockfill materials as part of the dams. Vegetative growth is another issue in which, because of the abundant supply of water that is available at the near around the downstream face of the dam, and it is not subjected to any submergence, there is a very strong tendency for large trees to grow up on the downstream face of the dam, and the roots of these trees will get attracted towards the upstream, and which will again create a burrow when these roots will die. So the vegetative growth on the downstream face of the dam is a important consideration, and this have to be controlled for managing the dam safety of these structures. The slopes that are created are also subjected to the earthquake loads, and there can be slide on these slopes, and this sliding, or due to some other faulty design, due to less compaction, the sliding may take place, and the sliding of the slopes is another area of concern which have to be monitored and which have to be managed during the life cycle of the dam. And for that, the sliding of the slopes is another important thing. So materials and aging perform a very important factor in determining the safety of the dam.